All right. You asked me last year about this time if I would come up and speak about the struggles and how God impacted my life. I'd say, hell no. The only reason why I'm here today is because of God. And I'm here to show everybody and tell everybody that God is real and God is good. So my testimony goes all the way back to the 1990s. I come from a military family. So we had moved from England to Oklahoma City back in 1990. Pretty rough school that I ended up going to. I remember my mom walking me into Harding Middle School, which was a very rough place. And as I'm walking to the hall, I see this white kid running down the hall, face all bloody. I was like, well, this is going to be interesting. And so back in the 90s, my parents were real religious. My dad was stationed in San Antonio before we went to England, and they were foster home parents. So we had about 12 total kids in a Baptist children's home, including me. So my family's background on religion is pretty powerful. However, back in the 90s, the culture was different at church. So I would go to the youth groups, and I would get bullied by parents, by the youth kids. I even got in my first fist fight at the church. So it kind of set me on a bad path, and I ended up, doing some bad things. I'd go and I'd steal the money from the offering plate in the youth group, and I was just, I was so hurt, so walled up. I didn't want to have anything to do with church for the rest of my adult life. So I finished up schooling here in Oklahoma City, joined the Army, was planning on being a lifer, was deployed in the Middle East back in 2003. I was injured, and so that put a squash on my lifelong career that I had planned with the Army. And so I had to look for a different course. Starting to go through the Oklahoma City police process to get into the academy. I'd gone through all the testing, barely passed the lie detector, and I didn't know what direction I was going to go to, and so one of my buddies that served in the same platoon as me, he was in oil and gas in Houston. Ended up giving me a call when I needed it the most, and said, "Hey man, come on down." And so I did. Go down to Houston, and I start at the very bottom. I'm just a hand pressure washing spacers and things like that. And I had progressed to, shop lead. Then there was an opportunity to be a field engineer. At this time, the Weatherford product line was still in its infancy stages, so there was a lot of bugs and stuff. I would work about 20% offshore, 80% offshore, 20% land. And I remember one particular time offshore. We had new software. Everything was basically in prototype, if you will, and we're calculating pore pressure by hand. We're doing resistivity, drilling into an overpressurized zone, and all of a sudden the database just stops putting all the data that's coming in. So at that time we were going, 120 feet per hour, logging, getting into the, watching to see where that overpressurized zone is. And then it stops, and so we have to tell them, slow down, we got to do some controlled drilling here. We're creeping, right? So we had to create an Excel file, put in all the resistivity, gamma, everything into that. Then we'd had to convert that to a LES file, and then import that to the database just to generate logs so the geologists could see. And we had been up for days, because it took two of us to get through this. And one day, obviously the company man's all pissed. He's yelling, "LWD, how fast can we drill?" I said, 30 words per minute. He was none too pleased. We had to fly out the designer of the software and try to fix it, but it never got fixed, so we just kind of limped along. And that's kind of how my field engineering days kind of went by. After that, I had an opportunity to take my boss's position on operations management, and so I did that, covered all of North America, Gulf of Mexico, did some technical support for Russia, China, Thailand, and everything was going great. I was also the RSO and covered everything before all the HR software had come out, and I was doing really good. The only thing is I was the only hand that didn't have his degree. I'd tried going through school while I was in the military, but every time I would get deployed, and so I'd be gone, miss out on all that stuff. And I had over 55 direct reports that had masters, and everybody was degreed, so I had to try to work harder, and that's my work ethic got me to where I went. I always try to outwork and try to show up everybody that I could, because I knew the cards were stacked against me. Yeah, and so I ended up had another position that as an in-house advisor for Petroc Energy BHP, and so after a number of years in Houston, I ended up transferring there, and I had learned that there were 12 Weatherford hands that had tried out. Some lasted only a couple hours. The most was like 2 weeks. Nobody could get in with this customer, so I managed to do that. Did it very successfully. And that role turned into, instead of one product line focused, was a wide range of basically all the product lines that Weatherford had. Even with old Rick here, had to, they were still charging for 2 years of drill pipe that was lost in the hole. I had to work on everything. You don't really know in a multi-product line company the issues that everybody has, and there was a lot of issues. After that, got an opportunity to go into the corporate side of Weatherford, which was huge to me. Again, because I was stacked at the lowest compared to everybody else. Ended up reporting to the COO of the company at one point in time, Carl Blanchard, and so I was at my peak. I had busted my butt. I was always the first one to get through the projects, and then 2020 happened. That was a very depressive time in my life. I'd gone from the peak, worked my butt off over 16 years, and then, everything just imploded. All my backup plans to go overseas and work, or even backup jobs that I had lined up, everything was gone. And so now I'm competing for jobs that drilling engineers and everybody else is going after. And so very difficult time in my life. I was able to find work outside the industry, signed a year contract with them, But at the same time, I had four other side jobs. So every morning, get up, make calls. I'd go to my my 9 to 5. During the breaks, I'd be making more calls. During lunch, running around. After work, Saturday, Sunday. So there wasn't a time that I wasn't moving and trying to provide. And still at the same time, I'm going through the motions, trying to get with my contacts, see if there's a way to get back in oil and gas. Even though one of my side jobs was contracting for a directional company, and so I just became so depressed. Thought everything was over. Right? I got to start from scratch. Got to find a company who will hire me that doesn't care about a degree, just my experience. And I got to a point where I felt like, my family would be better off without me. And so every day for about a month, I would go sit in my truck during lunch, grab my Glock, chamber around, put it to my head, and I'd squeeze on the trigger, just enough to surprise me. Every day for a month, is this going to be the day? Chamber around, put it on my heart. Every day, squeezing. To the point where I was I was done. And the day that I said, I'm just going to do it, I'm done, I go out to my truck, do the same thing. I've been emotionless, calm, 100% at peace. I go, chamber around, about to put it to my head, and then my brother, Charlie Mathis, calls. Have a long conversation with him. He didn't know what was going on. Scotty Turner knew something was going on, but they didn't know the story. Kind of wired to keep everything closed. Our struggles. You don't want to share what your struggles are with others. But after that conversation with Charlie, I realized I need help, and so I go home and I tell the one person that should be there for me what I've been doing, and she turned her back on me and walked away. And so I knew I was all alone. And the only thing that ripped me from that sheer depressive state was my oldest son was 14 at the time. This is I think January 2nd or 3rd of 2021. His best friend, 14 also, super great kid, awesome. Always wanted my son to hang out with him because he was just an awesome influence. He committed suicide. And so that ripped me from that dark hole that I was in. And so immediately I'd take my son over to the family's house. I'd grab all my cash from my side jobs that I had, gave it to the family, and try to be there with them, be their strength, be my oldest son's strength. He was a pallbearer at his funeral, and then I had gave a sermon or the memorial service for all the high school, and even though I'm so weak inside, I'm struggling myself. I'm trying to be the strength for my family, for their family. And then over the next 6 months, Jer was his name. His father, it was his only son. His health declined, refused to eat. So every day for lunch, I would go over to his house and I would try to get get him out, take him to try to get him fed, try to be there for him until he passed away 6 months after his son. And so I was a pallbearer at his funeral. And so, struggling all through 2020, now 21, just in a, I don't understand what's going on. After my year contract with that company outside the industry, I ended up getting back into the industry with another directional company. And, they were in the 6-year private equity funds with a 5-year plan. So I knew there was an opportunity to get with a major company if they get bought out. And so I, quit all my side jobs, quit that job outside the industry, and I'm all in, 100% in. Love that job. It was fantastic. It was good for me. I was a bit of a SME in that area, and I just loved every day. Until private equity pushed out the CEO, and they took over, and then ended up cutting me loose. Last guy hired, and there I am again looking for work, and so, trying to understand what's going on. Why am I struggling? It's 2022 now, and then I get an opportunity pretty quick. Well, I go down to Houston to interview for another directional company, and of course I go to iron my pants early in the morning at the hotel, and that iron was so dang hot. I go to put it on my pants and burns a big old hole in it. I was like, oh crap. And so I go around to some tailors and I'm like, hey, can you fix this? I got the pants on. They're like, no, I can't. Go to another one. Can you fix this? Yeah, no, you can't fix that. You got to throw those away. I was like, hey, let me see your stapler. And so I staple my pants, and I'm dressed, suit, everything. I show up to the interview, and everybody's in flip-flops and shorts, and I'm like, this is some bullshit. And so ended up leaving there. I didn't feel like it was going to be a good fit. Stopped by a crawfish boil, and there was another company there that basically hired me on the spot. And so I was with those guys for about 2 years, from 2022 until early 2024, and that's when the real struggles started. In 2023, had some heart issues, had to go get a procedure, lost 60 pounds in a month. I'd go to the doctors, the doctors I go to is at the VA. It's free health care for vets. I go there, and I tell the doctors, like, hey, everybody's worried, the family's worried, that I've lost this much weight. I'm super weak. I collapse all the time. I'm trying to coach my kids' soccer, and I lose my eyesight for up to 20 minutes. Like, everything goes out. And he says, oh, no, don't worry. You could stand to lose more weight. I'm like, oh, all right. And so I struggle and I suffer throughout 23, and I'm just in a bad place. I'm trying to be there for the family, still trying to work. I am so weak. I've gotten thin. I went from 240 pounds to about 165 at the end of 23, and then 24, I just went south. The lowest I got to was about 115 pounds. Still misdiagnosed after misdiagnosed, and I struggled. I think the summer last year, I had said, I can't take it anymore. maybe I should have just killed myself back in 2020. And so, of course, they call the sheriff, and they also call the highway patrol. Sheriff comes by. I tell him I'm all right. I'm all right. I was just in a bad place. I can't stay upright. My blood pressure had been 50s over 40s for almost, I would say, into first quarter of 23 all the way through up until November, and there was no explanations. And so the highway patrol shows up, and it was two of the guys that were in my platoon. I go and I say, "Hey, what's up, guys?" And then I go face forward. I can't stay up. They catch me. Fortunately, they carry me and lay me on the couch. And I was just in so bad shape. Last August, my pulse oxygen was 82%, and that had gone on until November. Again, I go and I tell the person that should be there, like, "Hey, I'm really struggling to walk. I can't breathe. My pulse ox is 82%. They say, "Just call the doctor. Go and sit down and watch TV." And, at this point, I'm just kind of waiting for things to kind of end. Something's not right with me. In so much pain. I'm so weak. My hand strength was down into the low 20s, which a normal man should be 80 to 100. Unable to do hygiene, can't take care of myself. And I didn't know that I was slowly dying, but I could feel something was coming. And of course, all the misdiagnoses were just terrible. All the way up until my children found me, November 15th. My middle son, who's 15 now, would carry me from the bed to the couch so I can go and try to watch some TV or something. Which I know, the family going through that, was really rough for them, especially the kids, seeing me in that state. But he had said that when he dropped me off at the couch, that I just slumped over and I was unresponsive. So he calls his mom, "Hey, you need to take Dad to the hospital right now." She tells everybody just to leave, go to their friend's house. But before they do, my oldest and my youngest, they try to get me up. They say I kind of came to for just a second, and I was just speaking gibberish, and then slumped over. And so they come, she calls my Army buddy, that was a highway patrol. They line up an ambulance, they line up troopers to rush out to the house. But she's like, I'll just take them. I don't know how to this day that I got up unassisted and made it to the car. I know God was working through me, giving me the strength to do that. Get to the hospital. I was just so bad shape. Haven't eaten, drank in well over a week. Hadn't taken a shower in probably months. Just projectile vomiting, body water, just everywhere. Couldn't make a couple steps without it. So the next thing I remember is I'm kind of coming to, and all the hospital staff, all the nurses, all the doctors are surrounded me, and they're calling out what to do, and everybody's working on me. I don't find out until I'm kind of getting better in the ICU, which I spent well over a month in the hospital, that I was actively dying, and all my organs were shutting down. Uh, I was in a coma, body was in shock. I had pulmonary edema that lasted from August all the way till they were able to find it. And the doctor said, I don't know how you survived. That state that I was in, it takes minutes, and the people in my condition would pass on. And he knew that I was in that position for well over a month. There's no explanation. I should have died. Why didn't I die? I should have died even from pulmonary edema. The low pulse ox for months. And I can't understand why. And so I realize shortly that God saved me. He saved me for a purpose. And I got to try to figure out what my purpose is. And so, I'm just thinking, constantly in my head, I should be dead. There's no explanations. Doctors can't explain why I had lived so long through all that. And the more and more they would talk to me, I would realize even deeper in my heart that God is real. And then I give my life to God there in the hospital, which I hadn't been part of church, hadn't been part of anything in over 30 years, right? Since back in the 90s. And then I started hallucinating. I was in real bad shape. To kind of put it in perspective, I needed 13 IV bags. And that'll kind of tell you what condition I was in. That and 115 pounds, of course. But the hallucinations started when I got from ICU to the step-down unit. I go to take a shower. I close my eyes. I'm on a walker because I can't walk unassisted. All my muscle is gone. All the muscle mass, my strength. I'm still very, very weak. My balance is off. And so I go to take a shower. I got a walker. I couldn't wait because it had been so long since I had a shower. Get in there, get on that little chair that they got, and I'm starting to wash, and I close my eyes, and I see through the wall. I see my youngest son in my hospital room on his Nintendo Switch. Open up my eyes, I'm like, what the hell? And so I go and I look, and now I'm just studying him. He's walking through the hospital room, takes a hard right, walking down the hall, and I'm like trying to follow him while I'm in the shower, like, what the hell is he doing? I see him walking down the stairs out to the parking lot. I was like, man, I'm not telling anybody about this. And so that next night, my mom's there in the hospital with me. And the next night, I'm starting to hallucinate, seeing same visions over and over. It's like I'm looking in on people through a CCTV. And I'm trying to I keep everything light. I always joke. It's part of who I am. I'm telling my mom, oh, I see this now. I see this. I see her walking right next to me, but I open my eyes. She's still sitting down. It's so weird. It's so trippy. And she's probably not talking to me. She's like, oh, my son's crazy. And then I saw it. Laying in the hospital bed, closed my eyes, and it's like I'm looking down, but my face is up, and it's a lot of tan color rocks with red light piercing through. And with these hallucinations, I could see, I could hear, I could feel, and I felt a tremendous amount of heat. And so I'm still trying to look, and this devil rips through the rocks and takes a swipe at me. And after that, I was like, I'm never closing my eyes again. You know, I was so scared. Call the nurses. I'm freaking out at this point. And I realized how close I came to going to the other place. Living my life without God, living a sinful life, you know, not giving glory to him when he needed it, and he saved my life over in the Middle East. He saved my life when I had the gun to my head, pulling on the trigger. And, you know, I'm 100% all in. You know, that scared the crap out of me. And so I get out of the hospital after having to relearn how to walk. And then this year, I ended up kneeling down by my bed, and I'm praying, you know, Heavenly Father, you know, thank you for your blessings. Thank you for my struggles. You know, I know you saved me for a purpose. Can you give me a sign what that purpose is? And I finish up that prayer, and as soon as I end that prayer, my phone dings, and it's Charlie Mathis. And he said, I don't know why, but I felt compelled to say, you need to share your testimony. And so I talked to God. I said, well, that was quick. Yeah, and so I got baptized. I had still been kind of struggling through the health, trying to get my body back to normal. Was able to get baptized early September. And, you know, I wanted to share that God is real. You know, it was John 13:7. You may not understand now, but you will soon.